felt really good
Yes,
to
it
hear
did.
the future president of the United States. Okay, so we're not allowed to say Madam POTUS, which is okay with me for right now, but what we can say is we wish you well.
Thank you.
And we just need to know, Senator, what are your core values? What do you bring to the table? Let's do this, right?
Yeah, let's do this. Part of what I bring to the table and what I believe, especially at this moment in time, must be a fundamental value. When we know that there are so many powerful voices in our country that are trying to sow hate and division among us, one of the most important values that I think we must fight for is to speak truth. To speak truth. Even when those truths may make some people uncomfortable, those truths must nonetheless be spoken, and I believe that this is that moment in time. I believe this is a moment in time like the time when my parents met when they were active in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. This is a moment in time to fight for justice and to recognize that it is a value, it is an ideal that was part of the founding of our country. We are, as a nation, aspirational in nature. We wrote and believe in these noble ideals, but we also recognize, those of us, the leaders in this room, that we have not yet reached those ideals. And so those ideals must be fought for still. And so fight we will. Fight we will.
Was that core value sort of fostered with your upbringing in Oakland with a wonderful multicultural family?
It was. I mean, my sister Maya and I, we joke that we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting for this thing called justice. And it was about folks understanding the commonalities that must be the basis of all that we do to build community, to build unity, to build coalitions. We have known that in our history, that has been a source of our strength, is to bring folks together. And I think we have a natural, well-developed skill, we in this room, to be able to recognize what is important and what is not, and fight for the best of who we are, but fight knowing that there's a lot at stake, and if we don't take it seriously, we have a lot to lose.
Is that one of the reasons why you chose Howard University?
Absolutely. You know. Absolutely.
Everybody always get, you know, they get excited when you hear HBCU, Howard University.
Listen, HBCUs, I always say, you know, I get interviewed a lot, especially these days, and I say, you know, there are two things in particular that made me who I am today. An incredibly strong mother and a family that nurtured me, and Howard University. And for those of us who attended HBCUs, and not to the exclusion of those who did not, but to those of us who attended HBCUs, we know what that means. I was just at Howard earlier this week, and I was talking about freshman orientation, the first day, and so for the Howard alumni, you'll appreciate this, the freshman orientation at Crampton Hall, right? And you go to Crampton, but it's a meeting place on campus, but all of us, right, who went to HBCUs, you go, and you look around the room from wherever you came. You may have been the only one like you in your high school or in your neighborhood, or maybe you went, you know, you grew up in Detroit and you were good, you've seen a lot of folks, but but you go your first day and you look around and you see a room or a hall or a campus full of people who look just like you. And you then are in an environment where everything tells you that you can be great and you will be given the resources and the expectation to achieve that, and the only thing standing in the way of your success will be you. And it teaches you, it teaches you that you also, as a young black woman or man, that you don't have to be limited by other people's perceptions of who you are. That you come from great people. You stand on shoulders of those who came before us. You live in the context of legacy. There is another way that I think about it, which is like a relay race. right? There are those who came before us, and they raced their part. They carried the baton when it was their turn. And then now we're in a position where we've been given the baton. And the question is, what are you going to do with the time in which you are carrying the baton during that race? And that's part of what you learn at an HBCU, which is, you know, my mother used to have this joke, and she'd look at us and say, I don't know what's wrong with you kids. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? And her point being that we didn't just show up being who we are. We exist in the context of things that came before us. And when you learn that, especially in those formative years, it gives you a great sense of confidence and pride in knowing, one, that you come with people, knowing you are not alone. You know, I say to so many of the people I mentor, you be careful when people tell you, oh, you're special, you're unique. Because maybe they mean it as a compliment, but there is another interpretation of that and takeaway from that.
Do tell.
Which is to suggest, right? You know what I'm talking about, Star.
Oh, yeah.
Which is to suggest you're the only one like you.
You know you're so articulate.
Well, exactly, right? You're so special that way, right? No, we're not unicorns. Look around this room. We come with people. There are a lot of us. There are a lot of us. And with that comes power. And you know, you and I have talked about this. And with that comes power, because what we also know, this room of powerful women, you will find many times in your life, while you're carrying that baton, that you will be the only one that looks like you in a room. And it could be a boardroom, a meeting room, a hearing room. Look, I'm only the second black woman ever elected to the United States Senate. So we've all had these experiences.
Don't just drop that little nugget. We're proud of that, and we want some more black women elected to the United States Senate.
Yes, we do.
We are proud of your position.
We have to. But it's so important to remember, and I say this to the young people that I also mentor, it's so important to remember when you're in that room. And I would urge everyone here today to look around this room and hold this image in your heart. And remember that when we're in those rooms, seemingly the only one like us, that we're all in that room with you. And it's critically important to remember that. And to remember that everyone here, when you're in that room, is cheering you on and is supporting you and is proud of you. And so sit in that room with, chin up, shoulders back, knowing that your voice is powerful and it represents a whole lot of people who are proud that you are there.
And cheering you on the whole time.
And cheering you on the whole time.
Did you see the sorors while you were at Howard University? You know the sorors, they sit and they wait for me to ask that question. Miss Alpha Chapter, I pledged.
Alpha Kappa, Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
I was your second supreme, so I know you know how to do that. Yes. Did you see the sorors while you were there? I mean, I asked that question, one, because we love it. But more importantly, you're a girl's girl. We've known each other literally almost 30 years.
Yes, we have.
And you've always been a girl's girl. That's powerful.
Yeah.
And that's something to stand on.
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that to you publicly.
Thank you, Star.
It's a long time.
Thank you, Star.
What has that given you?
Well, it's a sisterhood, right? It is a blessing. It is a gift that we also choose to receive.
Yes.
And it is something everyone should choose to receive, because there's great power that comes with the sisterhood, that comes with these friendships where you can call somebody in the middle of the night and laugh at the thing you're not supposed to laugh at, or, cry when you don't want anyone else to see your tears, or shout, or, curse, or whatever you need to do. And you can do it in a place that is safe and without judgment. That is the kind of, the word support undervalues the significance of it. But it is the thing that keeps you going. I would not have been able to accomplish what I have in my career and in my life without the support of my actual sister and my chosen sisters. There is no way I'd be where I am today.
You know, there is no question that you have achieved great success.
Yeah.
As an attorney, as a prosecutor, as the first attorney general, African-American woman attorney general of one of the largest states of our union, and now as a United States Senator. That's not the end of your story. But Senator, have you stepped in it? Have you had a setback that also helped to form that success?
Yeah, I've had many along the way. I mean, I've had the setback of you know, attempting to run for offices where nobody thought that we could win, and all that comes with that. You know, I've had the setback, frankly, and this is a very personal setback, but of losing my mother. That was devastating for me.
It's the worst club to ever be a part of.
It's the worst. It's the worst. And, but you know, through painful experiences, there is something about, it's cliche, right? But something about experiencing pain and disappointment that does strengthen you. But sure, there have been moments where throughout my career, people underestimated my ability to get something done. But we've all had that experience. I mean, sometimes that is like a tool that people give you, like, good, underestimate me. I can work with that. I know how to work with that. You will learn.
I'm looking at the women in this room, all powerful sisters.
I know.
And
so great.
What advice would you give them on how to persevere through the tough times, accept the good times, and look forward to the next times?
Yeah. I mean, part of it is, you know, I'll say my mother had a lot of advice, and I will pass on and share with you. She would say, you know, don't you let anyone tell you who you are, you tell them who you are. And that means don't let anyone put you in a box. There is so much still to be done about this country and this world understanding who Black women are and understanding the breadth and depth of who we are and the capacity and the and just all that we are. I don't even want to say potential, because so much of that potential has been achieved and actualized. But there are so many who are still just not clear about it because they have not chosen to inform themselves. And so the thing is, don't ever let your definition of yourself or your opportunities or capabilities be defined by other people's expectations of you. You set your own expectations for yourself, and you use that as your standard for whether or not you have achieved your purpose. Another piece of advice, you know, that again, that my mother gave me, she said, you know, Kamala, you may be the first to do many things, make sure you're not the last. And I think we all know that. That's why everyone is here together today under this one roof, sharing this moment in time together, knowing that the success that we achieve, the strength of that will be measured not only by what we do personally for ourselves and what title or what salary or however we define our success, but it will also be based on who we bring with us and what path we create for others to follow.
You know, it's interesting that you say that you have to really know who you are. I've been paying attention to some of the discourse in the media about something that you and I have always held in high esteem. I always thought being an attorney and a prosecutor was honorable work. Why do you think people are confused, or some people are confused, about the work that was your life's work?
So I think it is it's a matter of mischaracterizing the purpose and the goal and the role. You and I mean, Star is she's had such incredible success, and many may know her in terms of her public persona, but I got to first know Star because she was a leader among the Black prosecutors of the United States. We met in connection with the National Black Prosecutors Association and its annual meetings, and she was an incredible trial lawyer who had tried case after case, difficult case, and was a real role model for so many about what it means to be just one of the great nation's trial lawyers.
I'm not auditioning to be your attorney general, just want to let you know that.
Oh, all right.
Don't start. But you did it for the
role,
yes.
So this is it. So when I decided, look, like I shared with you how I grew up, the heroes for us growing up, so many of us, you know, especially coming out of and being born out of the civil rights movement, the heroes of that movement included the lawyers. It was Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley, right? It was these individuals who understood the skill of the profession of law and its ability to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country, and to do the work that had to be done and still needs to be done, of reminding folks of that promise we articulated in 1776, that we are all and should be treated as equals. So at a young age, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. Went to Howard, went to law school in California, came out of law school, and I made my decision. And my family gathered around, okay, Kamala, what are you going to do in your fight for justice? And I was all happy, and I said, well, I've decided to be a prosecutor. Well, you know, my family looked at me like I was crazy. And, you know, with some of they were like, oh, well, that's a curious decision. And with some of them, I had to defend the decision like one would a thesis. Because growing up, you know, we didn't have to learn, we didn't read about it in a textbook. It was not an intellectual discussion. We knew how the criminal justice system of America has treated our community, and in particular has disproportionately impacted the black community. And when I made the decision to become a prosecutor, it was therefore a very conscious decision. I purposely made the decision because my point was, look, I mean, my sister, for example, went on to run the ACLU, right? This is where we were supposed to go. And I said, there has to be a role for us in the inside of the room where the decisions are being made. And so that's the role, that's the track that I decided to get on, to do what we could to reform the system. And as a result of that, being there allowed me, when I was elected district attorney of San Francisco in 2003, as the first black woman ever elected DA of any county in California, it allowed me to create a reentry initiative focused on young men, adult men, who had been arrested for drug sales, and to create a program for them, getting them jobs and counseling and parenting support. And when they graduated for the program, I dismissed the charge. And let me tell you something. When I created that program back in 2004, people looked at me and said, what are you doing? We want our prosecutors to be tough on crime. Why are you letting people out when you should be locking them up? And I said, no, first of all, I'm elected and I don't have to ask your permission.
Ooh. Ooh.
Second, if we're going to understand the way the system needs to work, we have to understand that on criminal justice policy, we have been offered a false choice, which suggests you're either soft on crime or tough on crime, instead of asking, are we smart on crime? And by that, meaning if the goal is to achieve public safety, what is the smartest way to do that? And what the public health model tells us is really clear. You want to deal with an epidemic, health or crime? Smartest, most effective, and cheapest way to deal with it is prevention first. And so that's why I chose to do what I did. But Star, to your point, and you and I have talked about this, let me also say this. I will never apologize for also feeling very strongly if a child is molested, if a woman is raped, if one human being kills another human being, there needs to be serious consequence and accountability. And I'm not going to apologize for that. And so that's the job that I decided to take on. But I think that part of what happens is, you know, there are those, especially in this race and as it is gearing up, you know, people are going to say, oh, you know, Kamala was po-po. You know, she
You're going to have to interpret that for the media because they don't really understand that. But we all know what that means. Somebody got to be po-po because there are some victims, and we do need to advocate for the victims.
Right.
So speaking of the gearing up and where you've been right now, you notice that young people are so engaged in our political system right now.
Yeah.
They will not be willing to be put in a box.
That's right.
So as you start to think about this race and future, how do we keep young people engaged?
We have to listen to them. We have to listen to them. I mean, you know, since I've been in the Senate, which has been 2 years, I've seen incredible activism. And it ranges from, you know, the dreamers who have been marching on the Capitol to be seen and heard. It was the parents of children who are experiencing incredible health issues and disabilities who marched because they refused to let the Affordable Care Act be repealed. And it included the young kids, high school age, from Parkland, who joined with the same young people from Chicago and Oakland and Detroit and all over the country who came and said, we will be heard because y'all have not figured this out, and so we are going to use our voices on, specifically what a lot of them were there for, on the issue of the need for smart gun safety laws. Because they are saying, you know what, especially you people in Washington, D.C., you have not had the courage to do the right thing. And they have learned, also because so many of them were born right after the Great Recession, where they've come out of school or they're going into school knowing they may not be guaranteed a job. They're coming out into a world where they're acutely aware that so many of our students can't pay off their student loans. They are coming out into this world from the day they were born knowing they cannot take anything for granted and that they have to be active if they're going to be heard. And I find it very powerful. And I think the most important thing that we do is let them speak their truth and not try and script them and not try and mold them in our image, because their voices are powerful and there is a reality they are experiencing that for the most part is not being acknowledged at the top levels of leadership in our country, such as debt across the board, student loan debt, housing debt, car debt, credit card debt, climate change. Man, we have got to deal with that. These kids know that we are dropping the ball. They know on the issue of climate change that this is an existential threat to us as human beings. They know that people are playing politics with this because there are so many people in Washington who are in the pocket of big oil, and instead they are pushing, instead of pushing science fact, they are pushing science fiction, and these kids know that in a relatively short matter of time, we will be destroying this planet in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of what we're here in Nevada. You can look at what's happening here in Nevada in terms of how it is warming up and the droughts that are happening around the country, but just where we are right now. And they're acutely aware of this. There are so many issues that they are taking on because it is literally their future. And frankly, just to be very, very honest about it, they don't trust us. They don't trust us to handle it.
And we read about that constantly with the internet and social media. Yeah. It's almost a participatory democracy. But let me be devil's advocate for a minute. How do we incorporate that participatory democracy that you're talking about with the need for real executive decision making?
That's right.
Because everybody can have an opinion, just like everybody has something else.
That's right.
But we need to make sure that that opinion is relevant to what we're talking about.
So part of it is that, one, we require conversations to be grounded in fact and not fiction. And that needs to be said mostly these days, unfortunately, because at the highest levels of government, that cannot be guaranteed.
Alternative facts don't work for you?
They do not.
Have you ever?
It's fiction, but it's outrageous. It's outrageous what is happening. Because when you look at it, I mean, but there's so much, we are paying a price for this. And it has to be, we know this. This is more than, like, the entertainment value of this is, like, that's old, it's done, it's over. We're beyond that. We're not entertained anymore. Our lives are at stake when we have an administration and supposed leaders who are pushing fiction and also creating red herrings and scapegoats because they don't want to deal with the facts. This is a room of women who are also business leaders. Let's deal with the facts. Let's deal with the facts that right now we are undergoing an industrial revolution. We are in the midst of an industrial revolution. Over the next 15 years, it is pretty well accepted that up to 40% of the jobs that currently exist will no longer exist. I'll share with you a list that came out mid-last year from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The top 20 jobs in the United States that will see the greatest amount of growth between 2016 and 2026. Now, they're on that list because mostly they're jobs that need to be performed, but also for which we don't have the skilled labor to perform those jobs. Number one and number two, if this were a smaller group, I'd ask you to guess. And most people would guess something around healthcare, which is right. The majority of the jobs on that list are healthcare. But number one and number two, installation and maintenance of solar paneling and wind turbine. Investment in renewable energies. Right? These are the conversations that we need to be having, which is, are we preparing America for the future that is banging on our door? Are we preparing for the future of work? Are we preparing a workforce for the 21st century? People are acutely aware that their jobs are leaving, and there is no plan in place to deal with this. Instead, we scapegoat children and parents who are trying to cross the border because they are fleeing murder capitals of the world, and we've got a president who's trying to push his vanity project called a wall and put $5 billion into it to distract and scapegoat, because there are people in our country who rightly are saying, what is the future of my economic health and well-being? And instead of having a plan for dealing with it, the response has been, well, it's us versus them. It's those immigrants. And we're going to have to deal with the fact of this. And so when we talk about executive leadership, you know, and we have to also recognize that over the course of decades, we've had an economy in the United States that has not been working for working people. There was a tax bill that just got passed that benefits the top 1% and big corporations. That top 1% who are going to get about $66,000 extra in their tax returns, they didn't ask for that. They don't need that money. They don't need that money. Let me tell you something. In America today, almost half of American families are a $400 unexpected expense away from complete upheaval. $400. That could be the car breaking down. It could be a hospital bill you didn't expect. In America today, in 99% of the counties in our country, if you are a minimum wage worker working full-time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. This is America today, and the people are aware of what's wrong, and they're being given scapegoats and smoke and mirror about what's wrong instead of dealing with the issue. Part of what I'm proposing is we've got to lift up American families, in particular working middle-class families. I'm proposing what has been described as one of the most provocative breaks from middle-class families in generations. And this is what I'm proposing specifically. That for families that are making less than $100,000 a year as a family, they receive a tax credit that they can receive at up to $500 a month. It is a simple solution toward a very big problem, which is lifting up middle-class working families in America. These are the things that we have to get done. And if you want to talk about executive leadership, everybody in here knows we need to be in the business of problem solving. And it needs to be based on fact. It needs to be based on data. It needs to be based on speaking truth. That's the sign of true leadership. The sign of true leadership is not to hold your power and use it in a way that is about a raw exercise of power to belittle and to bully and to beat people up. It should be about lifting people up. And that's part of what's wrong right now, and I believe that's what we need.
You seem extremely definite in where you see us going.
Yeah.
Tell us the process of how you use your judgment in putting together a team. As
Yeah.
I look at what the present presidential team looks like, I don't see myself reflected in any way.
Yeah.
Old white dudes is not me.
Yeah.
And how do you propose to put together a team that can solve those really big issues that is reflective of the people in this room?
Well, it's the team that I have right now, which is an extremely diverse team, not only in terms of race and gender, but in terms of experience and capability. And I've got people who are, I mean, for example, okay, so this is the interesting thing about also what I'm doing right now, which is running for President of the United States. So,
you like to just drop those little nuggets, like I'm just running for President of the United States.
I know, I'm sorry. Okay. So, but so for example, it's been interesting, back to the issue of race and gender. So people have been, speculating, how will she do in Iowa? How will she do in New Hampshire? In fact, when I first got to New Hampshire, I did a series of interviews. And the first set of interviews, well, there's a lot of speculation that you won't be spending time in New Hampshire. You won't put resources into New Hampshire. You don't plan on competing in New Hampshire. Because there's an assumption that demographically we can't do well in New Hampshire. And I was like, no, I plan on playing hard in New Hampshire. And we turned out some of the biggest crowds they've seen. In Iowa, the chair of my state operation is a black woman. In Iowa. And people would think, oh, well, no, that doesn't reflect the overall demographic of Iowa. But if you look at her skill set and her experience and her talent and all that she contributes, she is one of the strongest state directors anybody will have ever had in Iowa. So this is the kind of team I'm putting together.
It shocked me. I didn't know there were that many black people in Iowa.
There aren't. There aren't that many.
I didn't think there were that many. I was like, go, girl. You better
She's
be
there.
the chairman. And you're finding
She's there.
them.
Yes. But it's also, Star, it is also about knowing. And I say this purposely. It's not about a statement. It's not about a statement. It's about knowing that when you are able to look at people and understand who they are and what they are capable of, you will understand that that for the most part, we have not been making smart decisions because decision makers are so limited by, their vision is so limited in a way that their perspective is only based on what has been instead of seeing what can be. And that's part of the problem. And part of the future and leadership has to be about seeing what can be unburdened by what has been. That's what leadership has to be about.
As you say those words, and you weren't paying attention, I had the photograph of you
Shirley Chisholm.
and Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman
Isn't
to
that
run for
something?
president of the United States. And you stand on her shoulders.
Without any doubt. I mean, and think about Shirley Chisholm, right? I mean, unbossed, unbought. She took that microphone. She walked up to that microphone and she was like, I own that microphone. I'm going to walk up to that microphone and I'm going to speak. And when she did it, the fact that she did it, it's extraordinary. And I am inspired by her every day.
Those are important qualities to this race and to the things that these sisters do every single day. Women of color take the mantle every single day.
Right.
Are you ready to lead on day one?
Absolutely, without any question. And without any question. And to your point about, because it is also about understanding that a sign of leadership is about service to and for others. It is not about self-service. And that's part of what we need and what we want. There are so many issues that are affecting us as a country. And I will say this, in spite of all that I can point out and that we know is wrong, There is so much that is right. And there is good reason to be optimistic. Any good fight is born out of optimism. And again, knowing what can be.
I hear you use that word a lot. If I had to pick a word that sort of defines your campaign, it's still optimism.
It is. It is. Listen, we would not have achieved anything that allows us to be where we are right now, enjoying this incredible moment together, were it not for our optimism, the optimism of our parents, the communities that raised us, and the generations that came before us. That was all born out of optimism. Understanding you got to fight, but you know, optimism is not about sitting back and being all just happy and giddy and just sitting there laughing. No, optimism is about saying, yeah, we can do this, and it's worth it, and it's achievable.
But these folk depress us.
No, but do not be depressed.
I don't even want to turn the television on.
Yeah, but don't, you know what, that's healthy. That's okay. That's okay to turn the TV off from time to time. Look, that's fine. And it's fine when you need to sometimes shout at it or maybe throw things at it or just, you know, the individual and group therapy we've all been going through, that's fine. But here's the thing. I often will paraphrase these words that hold me from Coretta Scott King. And she famously said, the fight for civil rights, and you can put in there the fight for justice, the fight for equality, the fight for fairness, the fight for civil rights must be fought and won with each generation. And when she said that, I think she had 2 points. One is that it is the very nature of these fights that whatever we gain will not be permanent. That's the nature of it, right? You know, it's like, you know, your nails grow, you don't say, oh my God, my nails are growing, you just cut them. It's the nature of it. So the second point, I think, of her admonition then is understanding it is the nature of it, that whatever gains we make will not be permanent. Understanding that, do not despair. Do not be overwhelmed. Do not throw up our hands when it's time to roll up our sleeves. It's the nature of it, and we're up for it. We are up for it because it's worth it. It's worth it, and we all know that. We know it in our personal lives, and we know our country is worth it. Look, we've not reached those ideals, but if we give up fighting for those ideals, that's not a good place to be. And you know what? It's a good fight. It's a fun fight. It's good. Like, it'll be enjoyable. Like, right? I mean, I'll tell you, Star, after the end of last year, it was the end of 2017, and to that point, everybody just feeling overwhelmed. And it was the end of the year, it was around New Year's, and I was like, just New Year's Eve, and I was like, I'm tired of feeling this way, like just feeling overwhelmed and upset and mad and angry, and you know, and I just said, I'm done with that. I'm going into the next year, and I decided I'm going to be a joyful warrior. A joyful warrior. Find time to sing. Find time to dance. Find time to be with your friends. You know, find time to laugh and enjoy in the midst of that fight, right? All those folks who came before us. I mean, my goodness, the artists who are part of all of the movements, right? All of the, you know, be they musicians or actors. There is so much about this that is about just being a fully actualized person and community, knowing this fight is worth it.
I told them optimism, that's how you are, which is a good thing, and I think we need this in this country right now. If you put the lights up for just a bit, I would love to see if we can't get a couple of questions in.
Great.
There are so many people in the room.
Extraordinary.
And I would love
Butch Graves, where is he?
Senator Harris, to see just how many people are here. This is the largest Women of Power Summit ever. Congratulations to Butch Graves and to Caroline Clark for programming an amazing event. So let's see if we can't get a couple questions in. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Soars.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
So quick question. So, Kamala, how do you plan on getting the white women active and in your corner and voting for you this season? Because we know what happened last election. Black women showed up, but we still lost the election. So how do you plan on activating that group?
Well,
Thank you.
Part of it is, thank you, is just helping to organize, and that's part of it. You know, but what I've been seeing, you know, 2016 is a reference point, but I would urge us to really look at 2018. It was extraordinary what happened in that election cycle. I mean, there are now, you know, 100 women in the United States Congress. There were women like Jahana Hayes in Connecticut, who is a black woman running in a district nobody thought she could win. There's Lucy McBath in Georgia, who ran on a ticket, right? Who ran on a platform that was motivated by the tragic killing of her son, and she ran on a platform of pushing for smart gun safety laws and won Newt Gingrich's seat. It's extraordinary. So I'm seeing great momentum out there, but you're right, we have to harness it, and it's going to be about organizing in the way that we always do. It's going to be about through our social networks. It's going to be about our professional networks, through our church networks, and reminding folks that if we don't show up, our voice will not be represented. But I do believe that after 2016, which is why we saw what happened in 2018, I think everyone realized in stark relief, we cannot count on the right thing happening. If we are not active, we cannot count on the right thing happening.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Senator. My name is Natalie Edwards. I'm the Global Director of Inclusion and Diversity for the Estee Lauder Companies.
Oh.
I'm 28 years old, and I'm a proud Howard University graduate.
Bravo! Yay! That's wonderful.
My question relates to what you were talking about earlier about the youth.
Yeah.
And I think this affects all of us no matter our age. How can we balance, in your opinion, thoughtfulness and intentionality with the issues a lot of us think can't wait any longer?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah,
that's
bravo.
spectacular. That is just wonderful, really wonderful. So it is about understanding that, you know, the intentionality, right? It's about truth, right? And it's about knowing that truth must be spoken even when it makes people uncomfortable. So there is that part of it, which is about, you know, right now in our country, there are a lot of folks who rightly are very distrustful of their government, its leaders, and institutions. And we need to deal with that. And we need to acknowledge it. And I think that's part of your point. And, you know, the thing about trust is, we all know it in our personal and professional lives. The nature of a relationship of trust is that it's a reciprocal relationship, right? You give and you receive trust. And one of the most important ingredients in trust is truth. But there's a funny thing about truth. Speaking truth often makes people quite uncomfortable. And so sometimes it's not spoken, and we know that in our personal lives, we know it in our professional lives, and we know it among people who have these big microphones and stand behind podiums, right? Because for them, the incentive is that we'll speak in a big room like this, and everybody will just applaud, and, you know, we'll make everyone feel lovely and sprinkle lovely dust all over the room, and then job will be done. Speaking truth doesn't always accomplish that goal. But here's the other thing about speaking truth that I have learned. Yes, people will walk away from that conversation, you know, saying, you know, I didn't particularly like what I had to hear, but they will also walk away from that conversation knowing it was an honest conversation. And so part of the engagement, to the point of your question, has to be about us, all of us as leaders, speaking truth. So then you're looking at me, Kamala, well, what are some of the truths you have in mind? Okay, here. If Charlottesville didn't make it clear, if the Tree of Life Synagogue didn't make it clear, racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia are real in this country. Let's speak those truths so we can deal with it. Let's speak truths. Education, big issue. Let's speak this truth. We're a society that pretends to care about education. but not so much the education of other people's children. Let's speak that truth so we can deal with it. You can look up and down the country and know it to be an issue. There are truths that need to be spoken about climate change, so many others. And so part of how I think about it is that we have to bring folks together around speaking truth, but also around the commonality of these issues. And I think that is very powerful, and it will resonate as being an honest conversation, which will inspire trust.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, ma'am.
Hi, Senator Harris. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
My name is Mallory Cruz. I'm here thanks to Liberty Mutual Insurance.
Okay.
Just wanted to let you know that I am a politically engaged millennial, college educated, veteran, gun owner, suburban, mother, wife, female.
All right, check. Got it.
I'm also a delegate in Union County, North Carolina. A disappointed yet encouraged constituent of the 9th District of North Carolina.
All right.
And wonderful. I wanted to find out from you how I can take advantage of all of these different attributes that I have, all of these common experiences that I have to mobilize in my community, which can be very discouraging in a red county. How can I mobilize others to support you? Because in a crowded field, I choose you, and I just want to let you know that. Not because you're a black woman, but because you're the real deal. And I think that you can be an example. Well, you are an example for everyone.
Thank you.
So it's a very loaded question, I suppose.
It's a perfect way. I think it's a perfect question for this time in particular. So first of all, congratulations on all you have achieved. That's wonderful. You know, and you are a perfect example, but and everything, and you purposely mentioned all of those things because some people, unaware of what can be, would assume that these things would be attributes of different people and not all exist within one person, right? So I love the way you did that, because that made a point that needs to be made as we go forward, and this is part of what's going to be our organizing tool together. And the point is this: in this moment when people are trying to sow hate and division among us, we have got to hold on to the fact that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, here's what I mean by that. Here's how I think about it. I think about it through what I call the middle of the night thought. Some people call it the 3 a.m. thought, right? Other people call it the witching hour. You know what I'm talking about. You know, when you wake up in the middle of the night with the thing that's been weighing on you, sometimes in a cold sweat. For the vast majority of us, whoever we are, when we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of the party with which we are registered to vote. When we wake up thinking that thought, it is never through the lens of some demographic a pollster put us in. And for the vast majority of us, when we wake up thinking that thought, it has to do with one of just a very few things: our personal health, the health of our children or our parents. For so many Americans, can I get a job, keep a job, pay the bills by the end of the month, retire with dignity? For so many, can I get my relative off their opioid addiction? For our students, can I pay off those student loans? The vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. And I think part of this conversation has to start from that place, and you are an ideal leader in that conversation.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Regretfully, I can only take one more question. Apologies. I need to make sure we stay on time. Yes, ma'am.
I got the lucky last question. This is amazing. So my name is Valerie Mraz. I'm a mother of 3 from Oakland, California. And you were a wonderful boss and mentor to my cousin Mark Guillory. This is actually the second time that we're meeting. Yes.
Yes.
But what I wanted to say is that you are a wonderful person. Thank you for being here. You are a shero. Don't let anybody stop you.
Yeah.
We need you doing what you're doing.
Thank you,
and I just wanted to challenge you a little bit on one of the questions that we've been talking about, which is money going back to the middle class.
Yeah.
You said it that our government does not educate our children about finance in school.
Right.
You know, there's 30-year-olds,
right.
40-years who have not been educated about
That's
finance,
right.
about wealth management. So when we give money back, right, to the working class or the middle class, you know, do they know what to do with that extra 500?
Yeah.
And would you consider possibly increasing, say, Pell Grants or other opportunities like that that help people like myself get through UCLA and graduate without tons of debt? And I loved the way that you laid into Kavanaugh during his hearing. So please keep doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. So, first of all, good to see you home, girl. Thank you. So there's a lot in there, and in all of which I agree with. One, there's no question we need to increase Pell Grants. We also need to make them eligible for use throughout the year, not just in the school year, but through the summer. But Pell Grants, you know, $5,000 a year, that was fine when I was in college back in the dark ages. That is not helping anybody with any significance today. So there is that. The piece about financial literacy, I couldn't agree with you enough. When I was Attorney General, one of the big issues that I took on is basically a battle with the 5 big banks of the United States over the foreclosure crisis that devastated so many of our communities, and in particular Black homeowners, among those who were devastated. And part of the issue there underlying it was a financial literacy issue. We engage in financial transactions and don't fully understand the terms. And so we need to prioritize that without any question. On the piece about whether people know what to do with that $500, they do. They do. They know that this is going to be about, for example, paying a babysitter so they can go to work. It's going to be about paying because the car is breaking down. So I'm not worried about that as much as I am about a system that has been designed in a way that is not about supporting working families. Let's look at the issue of paid family leave. Huge issue. I mean, we haven't even begun the conversation about what is a barrier for women in the workplace and a barrier to success. Paid family leave is critically important. Critically important. Affordable child care. In states like Nevada, the affordable child care is about $1,000 a month. So look, minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Y'all know how much that is a year? That's $15,000 a year. So when we look at the numbers, we know that they're not working for working families. And we're a society that pretends to care about family values, but not so much what helps families get through the month. And we've got to change that. So it is all that you said, but it is also about restructuring the system in a way that is focused on them instead of what we have been doing over the last many years, which is tax cut after tax cut for the richest people in this country. And we're now looking at paying a price that is both about a deficit, but is also about not allowing people to have the ability to raise future generations that are going to be able to be productive and give back. And so we got a lot of work to do. But there's a whole lot of potential. And the solutions, to your point about Pell Grants, the solutions are right in front of us. We just have to order our priorities correctly. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kamala, we're going to have to call this short, but as evidenced by the questions and the enthusiasm in this audience, there's a tremendous amount of Black girl magic in this room.
There is. It's extraordinary.
And when did you know you had it? And don't be shy because every one of us has it, okay?
But you know, I will say this, Star. I've never been asked that question, so I've not thought it out. But I will say that the moment that I feel it is it's a reflective moment, meaning that when I see you, I feel it, right? It's like a reflection of myself. When we see it in each other, I think that's when we see it, right? Because it really is not about one as an individual, it is about us as a collective.
Just like all those young ladies that stood and showed their Black girl magic, it was reflective.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
Finally, use your black girl magic. Makes a little news for me. And
oh, dear Lord.
if you could use that black girl magic and make one thing poof and go away, what would it be?
I'm not doing it.
Poof.
Just go away.
Go away. Just poof and go away. Glenda the good witch with the heels clicking 3 times. Bam. What is it?
Okay, I'm just gonna go with something that's that I do. It would be poverty. It would
Good
be
enough.
poverty. It would be poverty.
That's why she's running for president of the United States, because you know what I would have said. Ladies, and to the progressive gentlemen in the room, thank you so very much for your warm reception to what we hope to be number 46, Senator Kamala Harris. 46.
I love you. I love you.
You know that. Girl, you are the best.
Thank you. All right.
Bravo,
All right.
everyone.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.